Welcome to Vulnerability, Introspection and Growth, the podcast where we explore the beautiful, messy and transformative magic that happens when we dare to go within. I'm your host, Robin Harris, and in each episode we'll dive into real, honest stories from people who've faced their fears, embraced their vulnerabilities and discovered unexpected growth in their personal lives, careers, or businesses. This is a space for deep listening, open hearts, and soul-nourishing conversations. Because when we meet ourselves in our rawest moments, that's often where our greatest wisdom starts. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to another episode of Vulnerability, Introspection and Growth. And today I'm absolutely delighted to have Victoria Wright here with me. Welcome, Victoria.
Hello, and hello everybody who's listening.
And just to start off as usual with a quick introduction, Victoria lived for years with constant pain and frustration, dismissed by doctors, told it was all in her head, stuck having treatments that actually only made things worse. Then she took control. She learned herbal medicine, became her own experiment, and later dug deep into functional medicine. That's when she realized women's hormone health isn't about quick fixes or just estrogen. It's about the entire endocrine system and trusting what your body is telling you. Victoria, this is so speaking my language and so resonates with me. And I think it was last August I did a bit of CPD through my awarding academy, the International Meta Consciousness Academy, IMCA, and it was all about the menopause, called Pause is the Portal, that the menopause is actually that gateway, that window into, a calling to look into our bodies and the changes that are happening and to make space for those and to, like you say, experiment with them. And I feel that I was on my own experimental journey a few years ago, so this is really resonating. I'm so excited for our conversation. But I'm going to start, as I always do, with 3 quick questions just to help those who are watching and listening to tune in and get a sense of where we might go today. What makes your story relatable for others?
That's a really good question. So I think the first is that, and this is something that I hear often from my patients as well, is that feeling of having our needs being dismissed. So, my own story, as you've kind of alluded to in the introduction, was very much around, as a teenager, in fact, going to gynecologists and being told it's all in my head, I'll grow out of it, it's just my hormones. And I think often, even now, I hear stories of women who have, really severe health conditions, or, that they're struggling with perimenopause and the changes that that brings, and they're being dismissed. And I think that's one thing that I really want to highlight actually, is that we should advocate for ourselves. We have right to advocate for ourselves.
Absolutely, and that's something that I talk about a lot as well. And who do you feel will gain the most from listening in?
I think anybody who doesn't feel quite right. And that can be, perhaps you're managing some kind of chronic health concern, or perhaps you're getting a bit older and your health isn't quite as it used to be. Um, and there's nothing wrong, but you're not right either.
Love that, because it is that listening to our own body and its wisdom. And so many people just, oh, it's your age or it's your hormones.
Yeah.
Whereas I think, but if I'm feeling off, that's my body talking to me. It's sending me a message. It's not just, oh, well, I should expect that because of a number that I've I've reached this chronic chronological number. I think it is that invitation to really start listening and tuning in and learning and exploring and dialoguing.
Yeah.
So it's exciting potentially. And what do you hope people are actually going to take away from listening in?
I think my message is always, you know your body better than anybody else. Listen to it and trust what it's saying. Um, don't allow yourself to be dismissed. Um, really trust if you think something's not right, then something is not right. And listen.
Fabulous. Thank you. And in your bio, you mention that you went through years of being dismissed and told that your pain was all in your head. What was the moment when you realized that you needed to stop that outsourcing of authority and start trusting your body's signals instead?
It was actually quite late on. So I'd started doing my herbal medicine degree because I'd wanted to learn more about herbal medicine. And there was a training clinic, so we had to do a lot of clinical practice. And I was really, really skeptical about herbal medicine. I was a research scientist prior to studying herbal medicine, so I was hugely skeptical about this. And I thought, right, well, I'm studying this. I might as well be a patient in the training clinic and see if this actually works. And the amazing changes that I experienced really made me think that actually there's something else going on that I hadn't been aware of previously and that I needed to start listening to.
Love you turned to herbal medicine and plants. I've been on some courses myself that talk about plant wisdom and how there are vibrations within plants that resonate with vibrations within us, and we have receptors on our cells to connect and have that synergy with the plant medicine.
Mhm.
And if you look back at native peoples and hunter gatherers and how they explored and communicated with the plants and the energy of the plants to see, well, what can you give to me? What can you help me with?
Mhm.
And that I can't even put into words the fascination, the excitement, the joy that brings to me because I love nature and I explore my own connection with nature. So I think we have so much to learn from it. And even just over the last few days, and I posted about it in my Facebook group today, about how much we can learn from nature, whether that's taking herbal medicines or other things. There's always so much wisdom within
Mm.
nature that we can delve
Mm.
into and explore and learn from.
Yeah.
And you say that women's hormone health isn't just about estrogen, but about
Mhm.
the whole endocrine system. I love that you take that holistic view. So, for somebody listening in who feels a bit overwhelmed by that, if it's just estrogen, that's only one thing I have to worry about. But if it's my whole endocrine system, that just feels way too much to handle.
Mhm.
But for somebody in that situation, what are the key messages that their body might already be giving them?
Okay, so I think it depends where you are in your life cycle. Um, so the messages will be slightly different. But for example, as we get older, so when we hit perimenopause, our estrogen starts to fluctuate. Now, estrogen is really, really protective. So it tempers the effects of cortisol, for example. So when we start to get older and that estrogen starts to fluctuate, the effects of cortisol will come out. So suddenly, rather than being somebody who is really calm and feels like they can cope with everything, you're having anxiety attacks or you're not sleeping and you're feeling really stressed out and wired. So the if you like, the confusion, the endocrine system bit is my responsibility to look after with the people that I work with, but the signals are the same. It's what's happening that's going off. And that could be low energy. It could be hot flushes, which can happen at any time in life. It could be, you know, fatigue. I've said low energy and fatigue. It could be that you're not sleeping well. It could be that your periods are different to how they usually are. And that could be they're heavier, or you have more pain, or they're more infrequent, or they're more frequent. Um, it's any change from what's normally happening with you. And I think then rather than worrying about it yourself, it's finding a good practitioner who can actually then do some diagnosis and go, this is what's really happening, what's going on for you.
I often talk about getting to know the norm.
Hmm.
So, in this case, what is your body's norm?
Yeah.
And what is your body's norm in different situations?
Hmm.
And how does your body signal things to you? What can you observe? What do you pick up on? What do you notice? And it's not about changing or fixing necessarily at this stage, just about noticing. And then, if, as you say, it just feels off, and
Yeah.
no matter how slight you're able to pick up on, it might be more extreme as you start to tune in, and then you might find you can identify finer and finer shifts and changes. But those are all messages, and they
Mhm.
are all invitations to explore. And yes, that's great when you can find somebody like yourself that you can go to and say, what's going on? What can I do? So that you don't have to carry it alone, and you don't have to feel that you're being dismissed or told it's all in your head, or it's psychosomatic. So you're
Yep.
making it up. You get the sense of they think I'm making this up, whereas for me it feels so real. So what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
That's why I love what you're bringing, that it's saying to people, it's not that there's something wrong with you. You're not just something in your head. This is in your body, and your body's trying to tell you something for a reason.
Yeah.
Let's explore and let's address this. It's
Yeah.
not something that you just have to put up with.
Absolutely. And, the things, that perhaps aren't looked at when you go and see your GP are things, and we're going to get some details, things like, the quality of the blood that you're bleeding. Um, you know, these are really subtle signs, but they can tell you a huge amount about what's going on with your hormones. And you go to your body and you say like, oh, do you know, my periods have changed. Well, how have they changed? Well, the blood is slightly different color, or it's thinner, or actually your GP probably won't go into detail about, well, what does that mean? Whereas, a herbalist, a functional medicine practitioner is trained to actually look at what does that mean from your endocrine system point of view, and therefore, how can we deal with some of the root causes of what's going on, rather than just treating at a surface level with hormones or other interventions like that.
And I love that you say those subtle signals, whereas if we're really tuned in and observing and listening to our bodies and getting to know their signals, they might not feel so subtle anymore. And you
Yeah.
think of people like hunter gatherers who don't just have a GP
Hmm.
down the road that they can go to. They're so much more in tune and
Yeah.
knowing, oh, this has shifted in my body, or my body's asking for this. Or you think even of pregnant women who have those cravings.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is quite often the body saying, I need
Yeah.
something. And we've all experienced, probably most of us anyway, those cravings for, oh, I just fancy a really sugary snack or a salty snack or something that has that vinegary, lemony, sour flavour,
Yeah.
because our body knows what it needs. Or
Yeah.
I fancy something that's very herby today,
Hmm. Yeah.
the Italian herbs or the
Yeah.
different.
But it was what you were saying about earlier on about, that connection with nature. And there's lots of research that's coming out about, how animals and how we've lost that instinctive, intuitive connection. So, for example, horses, they did a research study where they planted lots of different herbs around the field. And when the horses were ill, they watched what they went to eat and found that they were going to eat medicinal herbs that were known to be supportive of the conditions that they had. And we used to know this as humans. We used to have this intuitive nature. And I always think, I tend to work intuitively. There's a science head in me, but there's an intuitive heart. So, when I'm selecting the medicines for people, the herbs that I'll put in their medicine, I often work intuitively and then second guess myself and go and look up, well, why am I putting this herb in a bottle for somebody? And actually, I can always find the scientific reason and go, oh yeah, that's why intuitively I'm going, this is the right herb for you, Robin. Because somehow the more we listen to that, the more it comes out of us.
I've done a little bit of learning on zoopharmacognosy, which is what you're talking about, where animals choose the
Hmm.
herbs that they need, herbs and other remedies, and looked into essential oils as well, which are other forms of plant medicine and things like the batch flower remedies.
Hmm.
So there are lots of different ways that we get to explore this.
Yeah.
And you mentioned as well, as part of your healing journey, a big aspect was learning to rest. And I so love this.
Yeah.
And it sounds simple. Rest,
Oh,
it's
it's
just a very
no.
small word. But for many people, it's actually one of the hardest things to do, and to give ourselves permission to take that deep quality time for ourselves.
Yeah.
So, what did truly learning to rest look like for you?
A lot of challenge, if I'm completely honest. I am very much an on-the-go sort of person. I love learning stuff. I am an eternal student. And unfortunately, that means that your mind is always active because to relax, I love reading fiction books and science books and things like that, which isn't good for rest. Um, but it was actually a really, really good friend of mine said to me, rest is an active process. And that kind of changed my relationship with rest, actually. Um, and to the point where, now just before this talk, in fact, the sun is shining here. It's absolutely glorious. So it was like, I'm going to go and sit outside for half an hour and just be in the sunshine. And this is important for my health, which is quite a change from, a million years ago where I would never have even dreamed of just sitting outside for half an hour during the working day. I know, it's
And
scandalous.
dreadful. But it's that thing as well that we have a sense we need to earn rest because our society is so focused on how productive we are.
Mhm.
And busyness has a lot of kudos in
Mhm.
a lot of circles. So to be resting is odd. You must be a bit strange. But it's that thing of no, I rest is an active process. It's part of how I care for myself.
Mhm.
It's not something that I have to tick so many things off my to-do list before I'll give myself permission to rest. And I have something I came across years ago. I don't remember the exact words, but it's basically that thing of rather than feeling I have to do so much before I can rest comes first because then I can do with better energy,
Yeah. Yeah. And,
bring more of myself.
when I was a researcher, actually, I didn't even think of it as rest, which is another mindset thing. But I would often, if things were going wrong in the lab, I would go for a walk. And, that in itself is a form of rest. And that allows your brain to do its problem solving. When you're up against something and you can't find the solution, going and taking yourself away from a situation can give your brain so much more capacity because it'll just carry on working on the problem anyway. And so, you know, I love the idea of like seven different types of rest. You know, it's not just sitting in the sunshine of a lunchtime. There's going for a walk. There's being creative, and all of these are really important parts of a health practice.
And I love that idea of, no, I'm going to move, I'm going to shift state. So if I'm sitting working on a problem, then if I'm not getting anywhere, get up and move, because the getting up and moving actually allows for the movement of the problem as well. If I'm moving forward in active, getting up and moving physically, it also, like you say, allows other things to shift as well.
Mm.
And having lived through chronic pain yourself, coming back to that, how
Mhm.
has that experience changed the way that you sit with clients who are suffering now? And what do you understand about healing that perhaps you wouldn't have known otherwise?
That's an amazing question. The thing that comes into my mind, which is a little bit of a diversion into it, is actually that for many years I didn't believe that there was anything wrong with me. I thought that being in chronic pain was normal. Um, and that in itself is quite hard because your whole life is then normal is pain. Um, and going back to, my herbal medicine studies, finding, within 3 months, complete relief from pain through taking herbal medicine was very, very liberating. But also it allowed me to understand, what normal was. And I think because of I've done a lot of meditation over the many years. you know, for me, that's about working on the edge. It's working with the discomfort. And so being able to sit with a patient and really hear them, like really hear their suffering and not shy away from it, allows them to really hear their suffering and not shy away from it, which then allows them to heal. And that is something very beautifully transformative.
Absolutely. And our bodies, we've been saying, are speaking to us all of the time. So, that being the case, what do you think that our bodies mostly want us to hear as women?
Oh, they want trust, actually. We are so disconnected in many, many different ways from our bodies. We don't trust the messages it gives us. And, let's listen and trust them.
Let's get back to our bodies being our bodies. And I love that we kind of touched on that in the introduction.
Mm.
That, and you said as well that we are our own best expert.
Yeah.
We, I often say, are the only one who's lived in this body for however long we've been here. And the doctors, they know a lot of stuff. They've done a lot of training. They have a lot of expertise and knowledge, but they don't know what it's like to live within my body, to walk in my shoes, to have experienced the different things that I've experienced in my life, and the sum of those things. And they don't know what my everyday is like. So, yeah, they can give me advice and they might prescribe something for me, but still they don't know from the inside what it's like. And to be dismissed, to have that knowledge and experience dismissed,
Yeah.
is such a disconnecting thing, because how can you trust yourself if you're told by the expert that, oh, that's not important, or, it's all in your head. So I love that you say it's that reconnection of trust,
Mm. Yeah.
integrating back into that relationship with your body, that trusting of your body, that loving of your body.
Yeah.
And wild being dance, it's that wonder of your body, the intuitive listening, loving, and dancing with your body for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, and my role, if you like, as a practitioner, isn't to tell you what to do. It's to do the pattern recognition, if you like, on what you're telling me, so that I can reflect back based on my medical knowledge what I think might be going on. But it's doing that based on your experience. It's not done, I don't look at you and go, oh, well, you have these symptoms. That's this particular pattern of stuff, and therefore that's my diagnosis. It's okay. Or you have these symptoms here, but there's this going on over here as well. So why don't we try and work out what's really going on? But I can only do that if I can hear what you're telling me.
It's basically holding that space and reflecting back. And where we've been taught to disconnect and not trust,
Mm-hmm.
reflecting back and saying, no, that is a real symptom. That is a real message from your body. It's not in your head solely. There
Yeah.
is obviously a head and a body element because you're thinking something and you're feeling something. So yes, there's a holistic message from your body mind.
Yeah.
And now that we can see that together, then we can start exploring together. What is it asking for?
Yeah.
Beautiful. And sadly, that is the end of our time together. But just before we go, I'm sure there are loads of people who've been watching, listening, and who are thinking, I need to talk to Victoria. How do I get hold of this amazing woman? So please, if you would share your contact details, that would be brilliant.
Sure. So my website is thelivingherb.com. I run a free workshop once a month called Hormones, What They Should Have Taught You at School, which does what it says on the tin. So you can find that on my website, or you can go to thelivingherb.com/hormones. Or if you want to book a free 30-minute chat with me, I love talking about hormones. And you can do that by going to thelivingherb.com/calendar.
Fantastic. And as always, Victoria's links will be in the notes below this video. So do check out. I'm sure listening into this conversation, you're thinking she would be a really good person to follow and to connect with. So thank you again, Victoria. It's been wonderful to have you here. I've so enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
And if you have enjoyed this conversation too, don't forget to hit that subscribe bell and hope to see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Vulnerability, Introspection and Growth. I hope it's given you a moment to breathe, reflect, and perhaps even see your own story with a little more compassion. If you find this conversation meaningful, I'd love it if you'd share, subscribe, or leave a review. It helps others find their way here too. Until next time, take gentle care, and remember, the journey inwards is where the real growth begins.